Really glad you're here. Avinu Malkeinu, תודה לך על הכל, תלמידיי תפתח את פי, כי אני יכול לדבר את נפלאות תורתך. תיגע נא את כל לבב קהלנו. בכל הדברים האלה, אנחנו נברכך בזכות ישוע המשיח. And I hope you guys can hear me okay. Last time some of you reported a slight echo. I'm using some software now to remove echo, so it'd be good if you could chime in, maybe in the chat, and let me know if things are working or not. So the Torah portion today is by Yosef Hurad. Then Yosef went down. And you see, I'm trying this new thing here. I don't know, I have two other books. Actually, let you see my Bible. I think this might be interesting. We'll see if this is going to work like I intend. I'm sure that's big enough. Well, we'll see. We'll see. On the screen. The Torah portion is Genesis chapter 39. And the Haftarah is again chapter 52, verse 3 through chapter 53, verse 5. Or some say 52, 3 through, and it jumps to 53, 4 through 5, which is actually quite amazing because it's quite messianic in there. All right. So let's see if this works okay. So hopefully you can see my screen there. Huh. Is it frozen or is it? Can you see it? Let's see. Yay, all right. I think you can see it. Let me just check. All right, should be good now, right? You guys see me? All right. Getting stuff figured out. We're trying to continuously improve the presentation, so hopefully everybody liked that. Let's see. Just check if there's any comments or questions. Okay. All right. So let's look here. So this is the beginning of the Torah portion. And now we can kind of quickly go through these parts with the comments that I have. So this is the part where it says, Yosef went down to Egypt because Potiphar had purchased him, right? And the Ishmaelites, it's interesting, the text makes sure we know that the Ishmaelites are the ones who brought him there. There's some kind of reason that it wants us to know this. Now, Rashi comments that when Yosef was taken down to Egypt, the text returns to the story of Yosef at this point, which was interrupted so that the story of Judah could be juxtaposed to it, both to indicate that the brothers brought Judah down. You see, so there's like a play on words here. This word here, this Hurad, means was brought down. It's a hofal, or some say hofal form. So he was brought down. In other words, he was caused to Yarad, to go down. But what Rashi is saying is that also Judah was brought down, right, because of his idea to sell Yosef. So Judah was brought down from his greatness on the account of Joseph's sale, and to compare Potiphar's wife with Tamar. For each of them was acting, again, this I don't agree with this opinion, but let's just see. I like to present it because maybe we're wrong. This is a great rabbi who thinks this. For each of them was acting for the sake of heaven. Potiphar's wife knew from her astrologers that she would have descendants fathered by Yosef, but she did not know whether they would be born to her by her or by her daughter. And so what I don't like about this explanation is like, so why didn't she know? I mean, is she not a virtuous woman? She's going to just cheat on her husband? So it's a little bit, maybe we could cut her a bit of slack if it's true that he truly was a saris, a eunuch, right? You couldn't do anything with her or something. I'm not saying that makes it right for her to cheat, right? But maybe for a pagan person, maybe that adds a little bit of something there. And then this part, so it was that Adonai was with Yosef, and he made him a successful man, a prosperous man in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now, Chizkuni comments that The beginning of the Jewish people's first enslavement was preceded in Genesis 38, verse 29, by the birth of Perets. Now, pay attention. This is important. Okay, the guy's name is Perets, or Perets, really, in the Hebrew, but that comes across. A lot of times, people put that in English as Perez. The ancestor of their final redeemer, Hamashiach, the Messiah. All right. So Chizkuni is commenting on the importance of the Jewish people being brought down to Egypt, and that this was marked by the birth of Perets, right? The ancestor of the Messiah. And so here we have an interesting thing. Let's take a look at this chart here. This is the patrilineage. This is the lineage of Yeshua on the father's side. That means, his adopted father, because adoption counts, right? Adoption has a legal bearing in Judaism. That's why native born and grafted in alike, because the grafted in are brought into Israel through adoption, sons and daughters through adoption, right? So even if you're listening to this, if you're not, a Hebrew, you don't have the genealogical ancestry that you know of, it doesn't matter. As long as you complete the graft, as long as you live according to the kingdom culture, you're a good citizen of the kingdom, you keep his Torah, then that is a strong graft, and you are just as strongly grafted in as native grafted in. And in fact, the Talmud tells us that someone who's born a goy, who keeps the entire Torah, is like the Kohen HaGadol. He's as holy as the high priest, right? And so, despite how opinions have changed over the years, many of you who've interacted with religious Jews who do not believe in Yeshua, you've probably had the experience of them telling you shouldn't do Sabbath, you shouldn't Shabbat, you shouldn't wear tzitzit, you shouldn't do any of these things. No, don't do that. But you have to understand, Judaism was not this way in the time of Yeshua. This was not the perspective, right? As you recall, Yeshua, he, in his interaction with the Shammite Pharisees, these are the Pharisees who were from the school of Shammai, he tells them, you look far and wide for a convert, meaning to find a goy to make into a Jew, right? And so they don't argue with him. No, we don't. He has to come to us 3 times, and we keep saying, no. Will you convert? No. Will you revert? No. Will you confess? Sorry, that's a tribute to the History of the World, part 1. Mel Brooks. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty funny. There's a little bit of dirty stuff in it, but I think it's 1970s or early 80s, so it's not that bad. He's got a bunch of Jews. He's pretending to be the Grand Inquisitor, the Roman Catholic guy, Torquemada, right? And he tortured Jews, right, to make them change their religion. And so he's like banging on the heads of these Orthodox guys, and they have a little song, will you confess? No. Will you revert? No. Check it out sometime if you haven't seen that. It's cute. Okay, let me just see if there's some comments. Sorry, my camera freezes when I go to check comments, so it's kind of a hacked setup right now. Let's see. Okay. Nothing new. Just someone tell me about their network. Okay. So anyway, really the proper attitude for the kingdom culture, for the real Judaism, right? The most correct Judaism, which is our flavor of it, accepting the testimony of the Messiah, is that people are not supposed to remain Gentiles forever. Okay. They're supposed to join the kingdom culture, join us. And adoption is the mechanism that legitimizes your heritage if you're not native born, right? And now we see that even the writers of the apostolic writings, in this case, Matityahu, he legitimizes the genealogy of Yosef, which is interesting here. It's not exactly Gezer Shava, but it's interesting because we have the sages mentioning Perets, that Perets was from his line comes the Messiah, right? Okay. And that the Messiah would be a Goel of Israel, a redeemer of Israel. Don't hear that language used that much today in the Orthodox realm. So what's interesting to me is we also have this parallel. In the text, in the Torah portion, we're talking about Yoseyph Hatsadiq, right? This Yosef, the the Ben Yisrael, a son of Israel, right? The son of Israel. And in the genealogy provided by Matthew, it's also through Yosef, but the husband, the Baal, Miriam, the husband of Miriam, right? So there's, like I said, the Bible does these things all the time. There's these little connections. Sometimes it's super strong, right? And sometimes it's just kind of like a little a remez. Remez means hit, right? So we have Peshat, the top level interpretation, and we go lower, we get remez, right? Remez is pretty good level. Usually it's good even to stay there. You don't have to go super, super deep, right? So we have a hint here that there's a connection, that we're supposed to remember, just as Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim Yishmaelim, that he was brought down to Egypt by the Ishmaelites, so too the next Ben Yosef, Mashiach Ben Yosef, the Messiah son of Yosef, would be brought down, meaning he would suffer. And he actually went down to Egypt also when he was a child, right? So there's that nice parallel. Very interesting. When you start stacking it up, it's, this is not an airtight evidence of his messiahship. We have many, many verses that we can look at to understand this, but it's icing on the cake, I think. It's a nice little thing. All right. So Perez, or Perets in the Hebrew, is an ancestor of Yeshua. This is from Wikipedia, so I decided not to edit and change Yeshua or any of that stuff with the right names. By the way, I should mention it for some of you who are new, we do have some new people, that it's worth noting that in rabbinical literature we have two kinds of Messiah. So it was believed there would be two Messiahs. Right? One would be Mashiach ben David. This is the conquering Messiah, the one who comes and reigns as Melech HaYehudim, King of the Jews, right? And then the other was is Mashiach ben Yosef, so Messiah, son of Yosef, meaning that while the other one's characteristics would be like a king, like David, this one was like another king, even though Yosef was elevated to be king of all of Egypt, not in title, but by virtue of his power. And Mashiach ben Yosef, the rabbis understood his purpose was to come and suffer for the sins of the people. And this is kind of amazing if you haven't heard this teaching before. I'm sorry, I can't give credit. This many, many decades ago I heard about this. I don't think we even know in the Messianic community. Maybe there's a good chance it might be Dr. Michael Brown. He talks about this in some of his debates, right, with various rabbis. And he's a great scholar and he's involved in the literature, and so he might be the one that brought this to light. It could be Dr. Stern in Jerusalem, who translates. A lot of people like his CJB, Complete Jewish Bible, and I recommend his commentary on the Jewish New Testament. Very nice starting point for commentary. So it's interesting to understand that the Mashiach ben Yosef is very downplayed today, and a lot of Jews have no idea that there were supposed to be two messiahs in rabbinical understanding, right? And this is all resolved very easily. From our perspective, yes, we agree with the rabbinical literature. There are not two messiahs, but two comings of the Messiah, right? First, he comes as Mashiach ben Yosef, that is the son of Joseph, literally a son of Joseph, right, through adoption. And also, the suffering servant. All of the attributes that the rabbis applied for the son of Joseph, that he would suffer for his people, we see that laid upon the king, Yeshua, right? We see this happen. And in the future, in Revelation, which we're starting in the first week in July, January. So get ready. Revelation classes will be starting very soon. I think you guys really should join. It's going to be interesting. We're going to go through every word, every verse of Revelation. It's probably going to be about a 6-month class or so. Right? Let's call it a study, because I expect to learn from you guys as well, not just me teaching. And yeah, it's going to be really neat. We're going to look at a lot of the Jewish literature that relates to Revelation that Yochanan would have been familiar with when he's having his vision, that Hashem could have used to influence the vision. and they help us to interpret, to unlock it, instead of just looking at, well, in Roman culture, this and this, right? Who cares? So hopefully you guys will sign up, and that's either going to be a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday night. Probably Monday or Tuesday night. We're getting it narrowed down to one of those 2 days. Every week we're going to have it. Class will be 1 hour only. So it'll be I think I will start on time. So this is going to be one of those classes where we start, and then that way it doesn't drag out and cost everybody an hour and a half because we're waiting for people to file in, right? So anyway, hope you'll be there. Hope you'll enjoy it. I think it's going to be really fun. So, okay, and of course in Revelation, he comes back as Mashiach ben David, right? That's why I brought up Revelation. We see him coming back victorious as a conqueror, destroying his enemies, right? People will be frightened of the Lamb. It's kind of funny if you're not, if someone wasn't familiar with the Lamb symbolism and what that means, right? That's, of course, tying him to the title of Mashiach ben Yosef, right? The symbolism of the lamb that just gently puts its head down on the chopping block and allows the owner to just chop the head off, right? I think if I raised sheep, I wouldn't be able to eat them anymore. We hear about how trusting they are. Okay, master, I love you. Cut my head off. So the symbolism of the lamb, it starts off as gentle, but making sure that the reader understands this is the same guy. He's returning, and he's taking on the role as Mashiach ben David now, the Messiah son of David, and he's very frightening. But we're informed that he is the Lamb, and that even those people whom he will be killing, they say, "Save us from the wrath of the Lamb." And so it's kind of interesting. I thought that'd be kind of a fun video game, like a lamb going around and like lasers coming out of his eyes, a sword in the mouth. Sorry, maybe a little too sacrilegious, like destroying people. All right, let me just check in to see if there's any comments. Okay, everybody's quiet today. Did I put you to sleep with the full reading of the Torah portion before? All right. Genesis 39, verse 3 and 4 say, now when his master noticed, I'm not going to read it in Hebrew, we did it already, okay? When his master noticed that Adonai was with him, and everything which he did, Adonai caused to prosper in his hand, in his authority. So Yosef found favor in his eyes, and he ministered to him. So he appointed him as over his household. And little David there. For a second, and all which was his, he gave to his authority. Now, Nachmanides comments that on the Lord was with him. Rashi's suggestion seems unlikely. His master saw how much. So Rashi saying that that his master thought he's doing magic, right? Because that was in Egypt, people like to dabble in magic, and so he'd hear him saying, but really he's saying like "Blessed be Kadosh Baruch Hu" and these kinds of things, right? And his master thought that was magic, and so he thought he's good at magic, and so Nachmanides is pushing back on it, saying, no, I think that's unlikely. Instead, he simply saw how much better things were going with Yosef in charge than anybody else, and he knew that God was responsible. Don't forget, we now see plainly that the Lord has been with you in chapter 26, verse 28. That is why he took a liking to Joseph, and he put him in charge of his household. The midrash that Joseph was constantly whispering and that he served hot drinks the instant his master requested them is a way of explaining how an Egyptian who had not known the Lord could see, quote, the Lord was with him, unquote. The Egyptian assumed that Joseph was performing that, right? That's it. All right. Verse 5. By the way, we're not going to re-go through the whole drash, don't worry. The whole Torah portion. Okay, I've just selected a handful of verses I'm going to cover. And, so we're not going to go 3 hours. Relax. Relax and pay attention. Okay. So verse 5 says, okay, So it was from the time when he appointed him over his house, and from that time, and over all which was his, that Adonai blessed the Egyptian's household on account of Yosef. And there was the blessing of Adonai on everything, among everything which he owned, in the house and in the field. Okay, this is a merism here. We'll talk about that in a sec. So, at Beit HaMitzri, the house of the Egyptian, commenting on that, we have Abarbanel says, now it was by virtue of divine presence, so that's a part of your providence, that from the very moment he had appointed Joseph over his household and all he possessed, that God blessed Egypt's house for Joseph's sake. Like that exact moment, that's when the blessings really exploded. And not only did he bless the items inside the house, which were under Joseph's direct control, but the divine blessing extended to all he owned, both in the house and in the fields, despite Joseph having no role to play in the fields at all. So why does it mention in the field here when Joseph isn't even out there? Well, there is a blessing, but Sarna comments that this is a merism. This phrase, literally in the house and in the field, that this merism, it's a figure of speech that combines two contrasting elements to express totality. So this is the Bible's way of saying he blessed him in everything. Everything. So the implication is even when he goes to work at the Pharaoh's house and Joseph isn't there, that everything that Potiphar is doing is blessed. Right? He's receiving favor, etc. So it's seen as not just having a clever servant or a servant who's good at magic, but but a servant who really brings blessing from God. Now this is interesting. Remember when we went through, when I was showing you we were going through this text, right? The actual beautiful Koren Publisher's gift tanakh, right? With a really nice printing there. Well, you can see the lighting's not good. But those of you who are on time, you saw it. So I said we're going to come back to this. And so here you'll see it here. So verse 6 says, talking about the master, so then he put everything which was his in the hand of Yosef, meaning under his authority, and he did not know with him me'uma, a single thing, ki'im halechem, except for the bread. Now it says bread. Some of the rabbis think that means, I don't know where they're getting this, his wife, that the bread means like his wife, like having sex with his wife. So, which he ate. By he Yosef, and Yosef, now Yosef was Yefah from Yefei To'ar. Yefei To'ar. Now there's an interesting midrash. It's midrash Shir Hashirim Rabbah. So it's from Midrash Rabbah. Shir Hashirim, that's the Song of Solomon or Song of Songs. And it's section 18, verse 6. It says that Potiphar had purchased Yosef with the intent to perform homosexual acts on him. Right? He saw how good looking he is, right? And so some of the other commentators, they comment that Ibn Ezra comments that Egyptians were not accustomed to seeing Hebrews, right, or other Asiatics, right? He doesn't just say he says Hebrews, but he's inferring that all Asiatics had quite a different look to them, right? The Semitic peoples looked quite different than the Egyptian peoples, right? And that the Egyptian peoples found that difference attractive, right? And this happens a lot of time. Like, people tend to find attractive what's different, right? Or at least interesting. Maybe not attractive, maybe interesting. So like in the United States, a lot of the white people, right, the Caucasians and the Ashkenazi Jews and the Persians, who tend to be pretty white as well, and other whites, right, they go to tanning salons. They try to make their skin darker, right? Especially the ladies, right? Or some will even buy tanning cream, right? And they put it on themselves to make their skin look darker, right? Because white was very common. And so it's interesting to have something different, right? To look darker, right? So the darker skin is seen as exotic, right? When I first came to the Philippines, the first time, I was confused and shocked that there would be these big billboards on the side of the road down in Makati. I'd be in a taxi going somewhere like to a mall or something. I see the big billboard, and it's got a lady, and she looks super white, and she's got like white lotion, and it says to the Americans listening, no joke, it says skin-lightening lotion or skin-lightening cream, right? And some of it's very expensive. And so they're like putting it on their face. By the way, I'm not making fun of you guys. I'm just explaining the difference in cultures, right? What's perceived beauty. So to make themselves look whiter, because in a culture where many people are tan, sometimes they find very interesting for someone to look white. I had a friend when I was working at NASA. This guy, I won't say his name. I'm not sure if he wants his name mentioned. But anyway, so you know who you are. He had one eye that was damaged when he was a kid. And anyway, this guy, he told me that he went to the Dominican Republic, and he met his wife there. And he said in the Dominican Republic, this is a white guy. Everywhere he went, the kids would follow him around. They're all curious about him and stuff. I don't know if they found him attractive or not, or if it was just strange that he was white, right? Like they were used to seeing many people with lighter complexion skin. So you see this kind of thing. It's kind of funny. The grass is greener on the other side, my stepfather used to always say, right? You might have something great, but you see something over there that's different, and that's what you want, right? But then they want what you want. And so it's kind of funny. So anyway, so that's explained by Ibn Ezra, that he doesn't go into the whole homosexuality thing, but he says, Yosef, the reason he was considered exceedingly handsome isn't necessarily that he was handsome by Hebrew standards, but he was handsome by Egyptian standards, right? Looked very different. Yeah. And we're also told that he got his looks from his mother, so he had features from his mother. All right, so according to Midrash Rabbah, Potiphar wanted to stoop Yosef. That's what was going on. But Hashem had delivered Yosef from his fate by castrating Potiphar before he could accomplish the acts. And Midrash Rabbah doesn't go into this, but if you read the text in Hebrew, you see, remember I said it was strange that they say that he was saris, right? That he was this term. We don't see this term very often in the Torah. This shows up in Esther, in later books in the Bible, right? This term that means either official or eunuch, right? And eunuch is the more common meaning. So this could be the Torah's way of indicating that yes, he's an official, and he's also a eunuch, right? He's actually both, right? I think this was the Babylonian thing that certain trusted officials were the eunuchs. I know the guys who the king appointed over to watch over his wives and his other maidens. They liked to use eunuchs because the idea is the eunuch wouldn't do anything, wouldn't be tempted. So, yeah. Okay, so that's that. But Hashem made him impotent, let's say, so that he couldn't do anything to Yosef. What a wonderful intervention. Vifei Mare. So he had a good body and he had a good look about him. Verse 7. It was after these things. But he saw that his master's wife lifted up her eyes, El Yosef, towards Yosef, and she said, Shichva Amy, sleep with me. And this is the part when we went through in the printed copy of the text. I told you guys, see this little accent mark on top here? It's called Shalshelet, on top of the Aleph, right? It's like a lightning bolt, kind of like zigzags. So we have many different accent symbols, right? These are all, you see this little curvy thing here over the yod, right? And this little, looks like a colon on the noon. And we have this little straight bar underneath the aleph, and we have this little curvy guy under the lam, and we have this little wishbone thing, and this little corner of a square, and this little like tilde looking guy, and this little 3 dots here, and this little, anyway, all those things are accent marks. But this one, on this word, and this was taught to me by my rabbi when I was younger, Rabbi Dr. Adler, and he pointed out to me that in the entire book of Genesis, this is the only place where we have this accent mark. Isn't that interesting? That's significant, right? That means the Masoretes, they thought there's something significant happening here, that they chose that accent mark. It's not so much the Masoretes, they just marked it. They invented the symbol, but it was already saying in a certain way, where this was the only word in the entire book of Genesis saying it this way. So you guys know sometimes I sing when I'm reading. The accent marks tell you how to sing it, right? And it's unfortunate that that you have to hear my way of singing, the Polish Ashkenazi. I don't think it's so beautiful. There's other traditions that are much more beautiful. But in our tradition, when you see this guy, this is the word that says that he refused, okay? Maybe I'll come back. I'll translate the verse and then come back. But he refused, and he said to his master's wife, behold, my master doesn't know even with me what is in the house, right? It's just idiomatic meaning. He's trusted all the meaning. The whole asher yeshlo, and everything which he owns, natam yadi, he gave into my authority, into my hand. Okay? So now let's come back and let's look at the accent mark, the part where but he refused. Okay? Here I blew it up a bit. This is what it looks like, the accent mark. Okay? And here's how we sing this. When you see a word that has that on it, the Polish Ashkenazi Jewish, the German Polish tradition, he said it goes like this. It's called, the accent's called Shalshelet. And we sing like this. This is interesting because the intermediate 3 students, the Shemot 3, we started last week learning the accents and what their functions are and stuff. So now you'll get a free lesson today. So here's how you sing it. You're reading along, la 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 la, and you come to this accent and you go like this. Shalshelet. Hear that? It takes a while, right? You're going up and down and up and down. And so the word then says, why my ain, okay? But he refused. And so the teaching that my Rabbi Jacob told me is that it means he was tempted. He's tempted. In that moment, he's tempted. What'd she do? She's batting her eyes. Surely she's not ugly. You know, a rich guy married her, right? So she's got to be good looking. And she says, Shechva imi. Lay with me. Right? It's not, these kind of temptations don't happen that often to men. Usually, single men are worried about temptations of they have to be careful to guard their eyes, right? They have to be careful not to put themselves in situations or not to actively pursue after a woman, trying to convince her, right, to sleep with him. In this case, she's saying it to him, right? Sleep with me, right? And so he's tempted. He's a human. That's what the Shalshelet is telling us. And again, it's not just the Masoretes, 1,000 years ago plus, probably 1,400 who invented the symbol. But the tradition pre-exists. The reason the symbol is there is because this is how people memorize the verses. I don't know how the traditions were back then, but if it was Polish Ashkenazi, that meant that when they memorized the verses, people would memorize this part as da 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 da, and later the Masoretes invent the symbol. So it's not like the Masoretes are inventing how to sing these texts. They're only capturing it. They're only coming up with a way to capture it, okay? Yeah, let me check, see if there's any comments. Wow, quiet today. And not too many people here. It's okay turnout. We're down maybe about a third. Is it vacation time or something? To share a Mizrahi teaching on vacation.
Hey, you made it to the end of this part of the drash. Mazel tov. Watch the next one. Please remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like the content. Donations may be sent to patreon.com/Hebrew Literacy. And as always, Kol Kavod L'Adonai, all glory